The email hit the inbox at 12:03 a.m. That specific kind of late-night timestamp that feels more like a threat than a notification, and by the time the sun started peeking over the horizon, everything felt like it was hanging by a thread. You know how it is. You think you're living in a quiet, predictable slice of suburbia where the biggest drama is someone leaving their trash cans out a few hours too long, but then you wake up to find out the board decided to play God while you were sleeping. It was a classic power grab, the kind where they sit in a dark room, puffing their chests out, thinking they're untouchable because they assume nobody actually reads the fine print. But they didn't count on one guy, a guy named Mark who, for 10 years, just did his thing, paid his dues on time, kept his lawn looking like a manicured golf course, and steered clear of the nonsense. He wasn't a troublemaker, he wasn't a loudmouth, but he was the kind of person who keeps records, and that, my friends, is exactly where the trouble started for the board. The subject line was boring as watching paint dry. Immediate policy amendments. Most people probably saw that, rolled their eyes, and kept scrolling, but Mark had this habit of actually clicking through the boring stuff, and as he started reading, his breakfast probably turned to ash in his mouth. They had decided, out of nowhere, that any exterior structure, sheds, workshops, the works that wasn't pre-approved under some shiny new architectural standard was now officially illegal. The kicker? Mark had a detached garage. He'd built it 6 years ago. He'd paid for the permits. He'd followed every single rule the city threw at him. And now, with one stroke of an electronic pen, they were calling his property a violation. 45 days to tear it down or start hemorrhaging money in daily fines. No vote, no town hall, no hey, what do you think? Just an eviction notice for his own building. The neighborhood group chats started blowing up immediately. You could practically feel the panic through the screen, but while everyone else was busy hyperventilating or threatening to call their lawyers, Mark stayed quiet. He didn't fire off an angry email, didn't post on social media. He just went to his office, pulled out a thick file folder he'd labeled just in case, and started digging. See, most people treat those giant stacks of HOA bylaws like junk mail, just something to shove into a drawer and forget about until the house sells. But Mark? He was the guy who read the manual before assembling the furniture. And buried somewhere in that mountain of legalese, he found it. A single, beautiful, devastating clause that was about to turn the board's little midnight coup into a total disaster. He sat there at his kitchen table, coffee gone cold, tracing the lines of Article 14 with his finger. It was dry, soul-crushing legal speak, but to him it was a weapon. The text was crystal clear. Any amendment that changed property rights or structural rules needed a 75% affirmative vote from the actual homeowners. Not a majority of the board, not a unanimous decision by a few people who clearly spent too much time watching reality court shows. A real, recorded, democratic vote. They had bypassed the bedrock of the entire association to save themselves some time, and now they were about to find out exactly how much that shortcut was going to cost them. The emergency meeting was held on a Friday night, the kind of night where you'd rather be doing literally anything else, but the clubhouse was packed to the gills. It was humid, the folding chairs were squeaky, and the air felt like it was vibrating with collective annoyance. The board president, a woman named Linda, who carried herself with the kind of unearned confidence you usually only see in middle managers, stood at the podium like she was delivering a verdict from on high. She kept using words like discretion and authority, looking out over the crowd with a patronizing little smile, as if she were explaining to children why they couldn't have dessert. Then Mark stood up. He didn't stand up like he was looking for a fight. He stood up like a teacher about to correct a student's math test. He walked up to the front, hands in his pockets, and asked that one simple, golden question. Can you confirm the recorded homeowner vote that satisfies Article 14, Section B? The air just left the room. You could have heard a pin drop. Linda did that frantic shuffling thing people do when they realize they've been caught flat-footed, moving papers around, avoiding eye contact, searching for an exit strategy. She tried to dismiss it, tried to wave it off as administrative interpretation, but Mark just kept that calm, steady gaze. He handed her the printed copy, highlighted in bright yellow, and suddenly The power dynamic in that room shifted so hard you could practically feel the floor tilt. Then came the twist that really set things off. A guy in the back, a retired attorney who clearly had been waiting for a reason to unleash his inner shark, stood up and confirmed exactly what Mark had said. The room turned into a powder keg. People started standing up, murmuring, demanding to know why their rights were being treated like suggestions. The board members were huddled in the corner like they were trying to calculate the fastest way to get to their cars without being chased. Linda tried to pivot to temporary enforcement, but the retired lawyer was already on her. "You can't enforce a rule you didn't legally pass," he reminded her. That word, liability, was the real nail in the coffin. Nobody on that board wanted to find out if their insurance covered them for acting like a dictator, and once that reality set in, the fight went out of them. They suspended the rule right there, but the damage to their credibility was already done. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere in the neighborhood changed entirely. It wasn't just about the garages anymore. It was about the fact that they'd been lied to. It turned into a full-blown reckoning. When the actual vote finally happened, the turnout was massive, the kind of turnout that makes politicians sweat. That didn't even come close to that 75% threshold. People weren't necessarily anti-rule. They were just anti-being treated like idiots. Linda eventually announced she was stepping down, a move that felt less like a graceful exit and more like a tactical retreat. But here's the kicker, the real icing on the cake. A week after the board had to rescind every single one of those garbage violation notices, a letter arrived from the HOA's insurance company. It basically demanded proof that they'd stopped the madness because they realized the board had opened the entire association up to a massive, expensive lawsuit. They were terrified of the fallout. Mark never bragged about it, never asked for a pat on the back, and never became the hero of the neighborhood. He just kept his folder in the drawer, kept his lawn trimmed, and went back to his life. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many boards out there doing this exact same thing right now, banking on the fact that nobody is going to take the time to read the fine print? It's a classic case of people in power forgetting that the rules aren't there just to control the residents. They're there to keep the board on a leash, too. It's funny how a little bit of preparation can completely dismantle an entire structure of arrogance. So, it brings up a bigger question that's worth chewing on. Where do we draw the line between maintaining a community and just plain overreach? At what point does an HOA stop being a neighborhood benefit and start being a liability? I'd love to know what you think. Have you ever had to deal with a board that thought they were above the rules? Or maybe you've had to be the one to hand them their own manual. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. I'm curious to hear your horror stories, or maybe your success stories if you've managed to put a power-tripping board back in their place. And hey, if you dug this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps keep this channel going. Thanks for hanging out and listening to this one, and I'll catch you in the next one.